super late on these two, so we're cramming them both into one. One film came out summer of last year, and the other one was also like mid-fall of last year as well, and I just, for some reason, a couple of very long movies, and I just never reviewed either of them, so here we are.
Expecting a miracle to make all this go away. You know they don't happen anymore.
Today, first we have Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't know what it was, I just didn't feel like a mighty need to review either of these films very quickly. Not to mention everybody and their mother was already talking about these films and reviewing them. I'll try to be quick about it. If you don't already know, it's the newest film by old Marty over here, the anti-Marvel king of cinema. I don't know. It's funny, both these films are just directed by a couple of old fogies, but I do think that one director has a more consistent filmography than the other one. The last film that he did, which again also a heckin' honker of a movie, he did do the Irishman in 2019. That's like what, 3.5 hours? It's a long boy for sure. My personal favorites, you know, a lot of edgy guys always say Taxi Driver in '76. Taxi Driver is good, but I think my two favorites of Scorsese's honestly are Hugo from 2011. Like, Hugo's great, mainly because I just love cinema, anything that has a certain respect or reverence for cinema. Plus, I grew up with the Hugo picture book and then saw that adapted to the silver screen in a very great way. I think Shutter Island, actually, from what, 2010, Jesus, years are going by. Shutter Island might be my favorite of his. Oh, Marty's been making films for a hot minute. It really is a large ensemble cast. I feel like Scorsese nowadays does the same thing that like Wes Anderson does with his films, and it's just going to be, you know, an ensemble. You're going to have one or two or maybe three like heavy hitting names, but for the most part it's going to be a real who's who of like, oh my god, look over there. So this film, the main star, worked with him before of course, but not me, Scorsese. Leonardo DiCaprio. I've covered him on the channel before. I don't need to get in his filmography. He's a known quantity, household name. People would be very quick to say that Robert De Niro is like the second star of this film, and I guess for the most part you'd be correct, eventually becoming more or less of an antagonistic, gaslighting, toxic force in this movie. But for me, I think the more important and powerful performance is Lily Gladstone. She was not very well known of a name to me, but she's been acting in the business since 2012, right? Yeah, 2012. But also props to her. It's been so long since this movie came out, and I'm just now reviewing it. Might as well mention she did win a Golden Globe for her performance in this film, so well-deserved, bravo. She's one of the best parts of it. Granted, there's a bunch of other little cameos here and there. We always like to see Meth Damon. You know, Jesse Plemons pops up in here. My boy Brendan Fraser. Brendan's in this movie too, even if he's just a sit-at-home lawyer boy who has the one scene where he's like, "You stupid boy." And if I'm not mistaken, I think that like Leo's brother in this film, not like real life brother, but I think the guy that he's in the family, but the other guy with the stash in this, I'm pretty sure he's David from Last of Us. So that was neat seeing that dirtbag once again play a dirtbag too. I wrote these notes down months ago. I'll go over them very quickly. I like most of what Scorsese does. I definitely recall when I watched The Irishman for the first time, it was a decent film, but you felt the length. I think it suffered from pacing issues. It was interesting and good enough for the most part, but I did not love it. But this was really good. It's an important and meaningful story that sheds light on the Osage killings at the time. It's definitely like a downer ending. This is not a happy story that you are subjected to, so just be prepared for that. Many of the reviews lead with this, and I agree with it. I don't know if you would call this one of his darkest works. It's definitely very dark in subject matter and material and what happens, but it's one of his most brutal. Like, we've seen like assassinations and blunt murder before in his films. Some of the most casual on-screen homicides I've ever seen. Just walking up behind somebody, pop, and then just like moving on. Like, whoa, Jesus. This isn't a spoiler because this is all canonical to real life. The white man coming in, trying to move in on the Osage and their prosperity. No justice was ever truly fully received. This movie just has been created and now exists just simply to inform of the tragedies. All-star performances across the board. The cast is great, splendid, no complaints there. Lily deserved her award. I mean, Leo, it's always one of those like, oh, look at him playing this little old southern boy, little dummy-dumb huckster and all that, who ends up being very complicit in, again, these dark deeds and matters. All the cast does a fantastic job. They're all on their A game in the acting circuit, world, whatever. Pretty film. Great cinematography, great imagery. It's one of those films where, you know, on surface level, I thought it was very well directed, a lot of beautiful shots. Everything came across the way it was intended to come across. They all packed their emotional weight. The shots were, you know, methodical, had a lot of thought put into them, communicated everything from story to character, etc., etc. Almost too much so. There are definitely a bunch of scenes that, you know, mean one thing on paper, but I feel like there's going to be some video essays out there, if there aren't already, that really break down even more symbolism and meaning, imagery and shots, and there'll be some more metaphors to unpack in there. I do appreciate how this film doesn't shy away from the brutality. People got murdered or raped or abused or used, drugged on a long-term basis, or just manipulated, or if there was injustice, it showed it all. Because again, it's important to know the story of the Osage and to be able to spread the word, basically. There's nothing that can be done about it now, but best we can do is know what our past generations are guilty of and try to be better. The only cons I put in is satisfaction with the ending, funny enough. Again, it's very melancholy. Like, I didn't mind it too much. It was a very somber and just straightforward conclusion. A lot of loose ends and a lot of injustice, and I'm sure that would upset some people who are looking for more of a classic narrative path, so I could see how that could be a detracting factor, but for me, I mean, I get it. I didn't love the ending, but I get it. Length and pacing, I didn't feel it as bad as I did in The Irishman, but there were moments, like couple small moments, where I was like, this feels kind of long. I think especially in the third act, the film has some moments where it kind of like slows down and meddles a little bit, and some scenes play out a little bit longer than they really need to. And I get it's all in service of the film and its narrative, sure, but for me personally, I just felt like minor pacing issues and a little long. I don't have anything against long films, but I think it's a really good film. It's a great film, honestly. I enjoyed it overall. I just didn't love it. So again, that factors into my review. Personal enjoyment, didn't love the film. I wasn't like, oh my god, Scorsese's best yet, what an absolute masterpiece. But I can sit back and be like, yeah, that was an important and good story. That was a great flick overall. I can't fault this too much to the film itself, because again, this is just a adaptation of real life, like what happened in real life. It's all inspired by a true story and true events. That being said, from a narrative perspective, watching this film fold out in such a way, there were like character decisions I wasn't particularly fond of, and I thought were kind of like ill-informed or silly or stupid or just didn't quite make sense, even in the context of this narrative framework. Very few complaints overall, but with those complaints in mind, I'd still give Killers of the Flower Moon a solid 4 out of 5. A 4 out of 5. It's definitely not playing in theaters anymore, so I can't really recommend you go see it, but I would say that it's worth a watch for sure. I will most likely add it to my collection. I tend to like all of Scorsese's films. I think he's a great director and filmmaker, and I'm always curious to see whatever he makes next. Granted, his next film is about Jesus, and it's like 80 minutes or something, so we'll see how that is, but gotta go with an open mind and an open heart, you know? But now we get into the next one.
All of Europe is uniting forces against me.
What's the outcome of this if you don't succeed?
Your Majesty, we are discovered. Good.
Guys! It's a trap!
I'm the first to admit when I make a mistake. I simply never do.
And then we have Napoleon. Boy oh boy, Napoleon. I'll definitely make this quick. Not to say that I'm gonna like immediately like shit on it or something. Talk about curmudgeonly directors. This is the latest film that came out around the Thanksgiving time frame of 2023. I just kept putting off reviewing it for some odd reason or another, but Ridley Scott's latest and arguably greatest. I definitely say arguably. People either love this film or absolutely hate it. I like Ridley Scott a lot in terms of what he's done in the past. I mean, the last film of his that he did that I, funny enough, covered and really enjoyed was The Last Duel. And although I've yet to see Gladiator, shame on me, I know, I feel like he does period pieces, especially medieval, but like I feel like he does period pieces pretty well overall. I don't know how historically accurate they all end up being. Plus he brought us Alien and like the OG Blade Runner, which is the framework for my actual favorite movie, Blade Runner 2049. So can't help but commend Mr. Scott for the great things he's done in the world of cinema. Putting aside all the cameos and ancillary cast aside, we have our main titular anti-hero, I don't know, whatever you want to call him, tyrant, ruler, strategist, all the things that are on the poster and the trailer. We have Joaquin Phoenix, which, don't get me wrong, I love Joaquin Phoenix. I think he always turns in a killer performance. However, I got some notes about this one. We'll get to that in a bit. What's really cool is to see Vanessa Kirby. I think when I remember when she debuted, I think it might have been, I first saw her in Mission Impossible Fallout is when she first caught my eye, but what a bombshell. Gorgeous, and I'm glad to see. I only pegged her as like a action movie star person, but now she's getting dramatic roles like this and arguably doing a very good job in them. Before this movie even came out, people were arguing online about it, and I mean, this like Ridley is just this curmudgeonly old man. I feel like if anybody has any slightly negative things to say about any of his films, or then he just argues and is like, oh well, you know, blow it up your ass or whatever, I'm just making movies now, I just love to make the movie. The trailer came out and people were like, why doesn't Joaquin have an accent? And he's like, what does it matter? And then the movie came out and then and people were like, man, you're really upsetting the French with how the portrayals are on screen. His response to that was something along the lines of, oh, the French don't even like themselves. I was like, God damn, Scott, like, okay. Again, I took notes a while ago, so I'm gonna go off of those because it's been months now. Napoleon overall is good. There's a lot of good scenes in the movie. Granted, I feel like some of the best ones were kind of shown in the trailer. I don't think the whole film was fantastic from start to finish, but there were some solid or visually striking or like intense, cool, dramatic scenes throughout the film, sure. Overall, acting is really good across the board. Great performances as well. Yeah, whether it's the main stars or ancillary characters, I mean, everybody is basically checking all the boxes, filling their role as they've been assigned it. Like, everybody's there's a bunch of good actors, a bunch of great actors in a film, so I mean, no complaints there. Visually, yeah, Ridley Scott's got a certain way of making his films. The last couple that he's made, maybe even the last three, I mean, they seem to have the same like color grading and color palette. I mean, I don't know how period authentic everything is, but the outfits look accurate. The people, the violence, the weaponry, the armaments, the production design, basically, like it all looks good and presentable. And I always like seeing battle scenes unfold. And especially in the case of Napoleon, who I don't know much about, supposed to be known as, like, you know, sure, a tyrant and very self-conscious and little dictator and whatnot, possibly even on the spectrum. I mean, seeing him be a good strategist, I mean, he definitely had he won a lot of fights and wars and battles and conquests, so it's cool to watch that unfold on camera. Also, I had to make mention of this because the fact that this happened during my showing was a pretty relatively packed IMAX showing, but specifically after a scene where somebody makes a joke about Napoleon being a relatively rotund at old Din Din, and I guess that called into question the historical accuracy of Napoleon. In our showing, I looked down in front of us, like 5 rows down, I shit you not, somebody pulled up their phone, had Napoleon on Wikipedia, like pulled up on their phone and was just like, like zoom in on the phone. It was too good. It was too good. Where we start getting into cons, though, a big thing for me was Joaquin's portrayal of Napoleon. I wish that he would have done, or that Ridley would have directed him differently, that he would have done anything to distinguish the character from the actor, because you have a brilliant actor, and I'm not saying he has to be speaking French the whole film or has to have a heavy accent, but something, because as Joaquin is acting, I'm just hearing Joaquin. Whenever he raises his voice and yells at somebody, I hear Bo from Bo is Afraid. That's all I hear. It's just the, oh, what do you mean? I can't do it, but you know what I'm talking about. And then a few times he laughs in this film, and I swear to God, I heard Joker. I heard Joker a few times when he laughed. I just wished, I don't know if there's accounts of what Napoleon sounded like. I don't know if people could even, if there's any recollections or anything in the scribes had dictated or something, but like anything for a better distinction than just, oh, I'm just watching Joaquin doing his Napoleon impersonation. All that being said, I enjoyed his depictions. I like how whenever you see Napoleon in this film in battle or in any high pressure situation, again, this is more of a pro, but I do like the show of like fear and adrenaline and kind of fueling each other, and he just gets like supercharged, or it goes into survival mode, and whether it's him being chased out of Parliament House or him leading charge into his first armed conflict, those were cool scenes I did like. I saw a couple breakdowns by people like online and on TikTok about this afterward, and with this new perspective I also was upset about it. From what I understand, the age difference in this, like Joaquin, who's an older man in real life, is trying to play a young Napoleon, and then Vanessa Kirby is playing, in this case, who ends up being his wife, and Vanessa Kirby looks visibly younger than Napoleon in the movie. The wife that she's playing is supposed to be older than Joaquin. She's involved in the film, but she doesn't feel like pivotal in the film. And so it's just a shame that she was used and abused by Napoleon in the ways that she was in actual history. And then her legacy just taking a back seat to Napoleon's character and his journey, and just not being utilized properly or cast properly or represented properly. So, I mean, Vanessa brings the emotion there and the heartache and heartbreak and the tribulations that she went through, sure. But I think the casting, maybe not the best, and the age discrepancy was pretty egregious. Again, I'm no historian. I'm just going based off of what I kind of know and have heard. You might have heard the same rumor that I did. There's supposed to be a longer cut of Napoleon out there. I would be willing and curious to see what that looks like, because the cut that we got felt like, best way I can describe it, a Napoleon highlight reel. It fast forwards through his life over the course of, what was it, three and a half hours maybe? I think it was like 3 hours, 20 minutes, but I heard there's a four plus hour cut out there. If there had been more scenes or more character development for him, or hopefully for his wife, for God's sake. So I don't know, that's all I gotta say. Out of these two big chonky boy movies, I would definitely recommend Killers of the Flower Moon more than Napoleon. Not to say that Napoleon is bad per se. I like Napoleon, but I think it was massively overhyped, and I think people that are like, oh my God, best film of the year, I loved it so much, I'm just like, man, you don't get out much, do you, sport? You can kind of learn some stuff from this. Memorable scenes, performances. It's a good movie, but I just didn't love it. I just don't think it's one of Scott's best, for sure. I give Napoleon like a high 3 out of 5. I give it a high 3 out of 5. It's certainly above average, but I don't know, man. Saw an extended cut, or if I revisited the film, perhaps I'd feel differently. All I know is there's a lot of weird, awkward, horny Napoleon sex scenes in this film that are gonna, if they haven't already, they're gonna be memed to high hell. Cool, double feature. We knocked out 2 more. We're getting caught up on the 2023 releases before getting into all these 2024 releases. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of whatever review I do next. And goodbye, travelers.